Hello and welcome back, I guess, to my channel where I make cosplay props mostly and show you how to do it too, I hope, somewhat effectively. My lighting setup has gotten worse, don't worry about it. Hopefully the props haven't, so do with that what you will. But today we're going to go over how I made my beautiful Rumi sword from Kpop Demon Hunters, because I love this movie and I know everyone else did too. So I was going to keep it real simple and just get right into it.
So I will be using a pattern to make this. It is linked in my bio. I did make it. It's pretty cool if I say so myself, but you don't need it to build this. If you want to watch and pattern it yourself, that's more than an option. This skills pretty much apply. So all you need is some EVA foam. That's what I recommend to make these things. I use 6mm for all the base pieces and 2mm for the details. You need a sharp craft knife, the sharper the better. Trust me on that one. And the glue I'll recommend is contact cement. It's just a cleaner finish, a lot stronger than hot glue, but if all you have is hot glue, you could definitely make that work as well. And I will do a quick little tutorial on contact cement later if you've never used it before. And some optional tools to bring your prop to the next level. Dremel, I like to detail my edges, keep it nice and clean, and a heat gun to seal the foam before priming. Again, optional, you don't need it. You will also need a wooden dowel. So I recommend one that's 3/8 of an inch by about, 37 inches long. So here's me at the hardware store. We're looking for something to serve as the spine of our sword so she's not floppy. You can see that a lot of them are warped. And what I like to do is point it towards the ground. You can really visualize the warp, so we want to find one that's as straight as possible. So you can see that this is the best one I found. That's like fairly straight. Good enough for this project. Real quick before we get into the meat of this video, I'm going to show you how to do a channel cut. So what I just did, that's a pretty normal cut. How you cut your foam, keeping your knife perpendicular to the table. A channel cut is going to help us leave or create a channel for our dowel to sit in and rest and create the spine of this. So you can see I'm holding my knife at almost like a 45-degree angle and cutting not quite all the way through the foam. And I do that to the other side too. Take your time with this. And when you peel that foam out, what you should be getting is, again, a nice resting spot for the dowel. It doesn't have to be clean, you're not going to see it, but you want to make sure it doesn't go all the way through the foam. Alright, now we're going to cut out all our pieces and get started on the prop. So I'm doing this channel cut down the length of the section A piece. This is what's going to create our blade. So for this piece, there are 3 layers to it. We're going to have 2 of these channel cuts, and then 1 where that whole thing is cut out, and that'll give us enough space to slide our dowel into. Take your time with this. I'm using a really dull knife for these channel cuts, so it's not coming out cleanly, and I have to peel it out, but again, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to see it. As long as there's enough space for the dowel and it doesn't go all the way through the foam, you're really good to go. Okay, and a quick contact cement tutorial for those who've never used it before. This is contact cement. You gotta use it outside. This stuff is really gross. Basically, I'm just spreading a thin layer over both sides of the foam. So usually you glue stuff together. This you glue separately. You wait for it to dry, which is usually around 15 minutes. It'll say on the can that you bought, and then you stick them together. So I'm doing a really thin layer. No need to go crazy on this. Let it dry for, I usually wait 12 to 15 minutes, and then you gently press it together using, I'd say, a good amount of pressure. That just creates a really strong bond, and you don't see any of the hot glue strings or the hot glue bumps. Pretty good. As you can see, that's pretty stuck on there, and it's a nice clean finish. That's just glue I recommend. Again, if only you have hot glue, go for it. So back to our project. So you can see I'm layering the next piece on top, gluing it down with the contact cement, making sure that that channel is still nice and clean and accessible. Alright, and the last layer, this is another one of the channel cut pieces. Channel is facing inside. What I'd recommend too doing is, before you glue it, just make sure that there's enough space for your dowel to fit and make sure you have, enough room. You don't want to find out too late. And then next I'm tracing the bevel pattern from my pattern right onto that. And what I'll do is, usually I like to use my Dremel tool to make these cuts clean, but there's a lot of extra bulk there, so I'll just remove it to save myself sanding time later, because I hate sanding. So you can see I'm really be careful with this. This is a sharp knife. I don't know if I recommend cutting towards yourself, so be safe. But I'm just creating that baseline bevel. And with swords too, I'm using hand tools. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to have some weird divots. It's not going to be a perfect cut. You can see this is what I'm working with. I'll clean it up a little bit with the Dremel later, but when you hand make props, they're going to have an air of handmade to them. And you know what? That's what makes them pretty. All right, on to the next section. We're going to start with the hilt. So this piece is another one of the channel cuts. So I'm just taking my time, cutting through this piece. It's pretty much following the same pattern as a piece. You see I'm going not all the way through the foam. Peeling that out. And then next go on the two pieces with the channel all the way cut out, and then another half channel piece. Beauty. And you can see where that dowel is going to go through later. And now time for some details. These are all 2mm foam now for the details. Put those on. And another tip too I like is to trace on exactly where I'm gluing the pieces before I glue them. So I know exactly where the contact cement goes, and it just gives me a better chance of success to place those on correctly the first time. So I'll just trace it all before I even get to the gluing stage. All right, next is section C. Your section C will look a little different than mine. I simplified it for the pattern, but this is basically the gist of it. So it's the same as what we did, the half channel cut, the full channel, another half, but then there's also a piece of foam sandwiched on either side. This is gonna just make it a lot thicker and more circular in the end. So next what I'm doing is I'm drawing the circle shape onto here, and this will help me kind of Dremel it and cut it into the more organic roundish shape that it needs to be. I'm really just winging it for this, just giving it something vaguely circular. We'll be covering it with a wrap later on, so it doesn't need to be too perfect, but I'm just taking my knife again, as I did earlier, and just removing the bulk to make my life easier with sanding. And then section D. This is the second to last section. This is basically like the little finial design on the end. It's basically two pieces of the 6mm foam and then a detail piece on either side of it. Again, with these smaller pieces, you just want to take your time. I like lining them up with the edge to just make a cleaner kind of look from the side. Makes a lot less work for me later when I sand it down. And that's pretty much it. So next we're going to go to the sanding step. Everyone's least favorite step, but I'm just sanding down the blade to a little more of a cleaner look. Again, I am using hand tools, so it's either a skill issue or it's pretty much impossible to make it look perfect. Usually people will use like a belt sander for this to get like a nice blade edge, but this is what I have access to, so we're gonna have to deal with the handmade look at the end. You can see I'm just sanding down the rest of the pieces too, just to give it a cleaner finish. Okay, after sanding, we're going to go back to C. This is what your C piece will look like, but I'm taking the wrap, and I have sanded down the edges of the wrap, and I'm just taking it and I'm covering that top portion. So 2mm foam has some stretch to it, which is good for this too, so keep it nice and taut, and it's more flexible. And just gently wrap that around the top part. And then I'm just cutting off some of the excess. And realizing I left a little bit of a gap, which I didn't need to do, but you could just take that excess back on and glue it and cut again. So on the C piece, there are two wraps. There's one at the top and one at the bottom of this piece. And we'll start with the second one. I started this one, you can see I used a different technique this time where I kind of overlapped the start of it, so you don't see the start and finish of it, you can really do it however is easiest for you. In the pattern, I left some extra length on both of these pieces too, so you probably will have to cut up the excess. At the end of the day, I always think it's better to have more than less. And that's pretty much it. So for the section E are just some finishing pieces. So you can see there's a hole, that's pretty much the diameter of the pole. So I like to glue it on with the pole in there just to make sure that everything lines up. And then I take it out to move on to the next section. So that's the first E piece. Very cool. And then the next two sit on the, I guess it depends on how you orient this thing, but the hilt side. And now it's time to assemble, the most fun part. So we'll take our dowel and thread it through the majority, or I guess the blade. What I like to do too is leave it a little bit longer with foam. There's always a bit of push and pull. It's a bit flexible. So I leave it a little longer than it needs to be, and then trim off the excess when I see exactly how much space my pieces take up. So next I'm putting on the B section, wide side towards the blade. I put some glue in there so nothing moves around. It's not glued to the dowel itself, but it's glued to each other around the dowel, which I find is good enough. And then next I put the rest of it, sandwich that on there like a big skewer. And again, there's some glue between those connection pieces.
And yeah, that is pretty much it. Next step I'll do is I'll usually throw some primer on there. I use just like a coat or two of Plasti Dip, and then I just paint with regular acrylic craft paints, nothing fancy at all, just the little bottles you find at the craft store. I do actually on my Instagram have a tutorial as to how I paint, how I do this kind of like light up ombre paint, if you want to go there and check that out. And that's pretty much it for me. If you guys are interested, I'll make a tutorial on how I made my mirror glaive back there. Pretty much the same process, but hope you enjoyed, and see you later.